Listen, there are a lot of podcasts about the Black church in the vein of Larry Reed and King Jives.
Yikes.
But if you're looking for a podcast about the Black church that's thoughtful, informative, substantive, stimulating, then you need to subscribe to Black Church Chats. That's right. I need you to hit that subscribe button and then also hit the notification bell so that you'll know every time we go live. All right, on to the show. What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday to you and yours. I hope you are well. Welcome to Black Church Chats. I am your humble host, Pastor Isaiah, and I see you guys already in the comments. I see my friend and brother Rick Barboa, who says, interested to hear this. I'm really unaware of who Chad is. Well, you're going to learn a little bit about him today. We're gonna talk about it today, Doc. Glad you're here. My aunties are here as well. Auntie Melissa, Auntie Millicent, good to see you. Hope you guys are doing well as well. What's up, y'all? Happy Tuesday. I hope you are doing fine. Listen, before we dive in, I want to remind you that next month we have something amazing going on here in Los Angeles. The Pacific District Missionary Baptist Association, of which I am the I'm the Dean of the Congress of Christian Education. We are having a one-day theology and praxis intensive. It is absolutely free. Look at the lineup, y'all. Look at who's all going to be there. Like this is going to be epic. Damon Richardson is coming. Justin Wade is coming. Nick Quint, Vince Bantu, Brittany Brown, Alex McElroy, Chris Samuels, Veda Hedgeman, myself, Denon Porter, DeAndre Lee. Y'all, if you are anywhere near Los Angeles, you need to get here for this one-day intensive. Even if you're not near Los Angeles, listen, across the country right now, particularly on the East Coast, it's pretty cold. All right, why not steal away and enjoy a nice, balmy January weekend here in LA? Come and check out the intensive. Let me put the link in chat. 1 second. I'm going to put the link in chat, and I hope this is the right link for this. Okay, I'm putting the link in chat right here. Okay, bam. Well, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. But I want you guys to come to the intensive. I want you guys to be here, and I want you guys to enjoy the intensive. Well, I don't know. Look, oh my gosh. It posted like 3-4 times. Pray for me, y'all. I'm still learning all this. Joel Smith says, this is the one I've been waiting on. Well, I'm glad that you've been waiting on it. I've been waiting to talk about it because this is very, very important in my opinion. Now, let me frame the conversation. And then I'm also going to be joined by a wonderful, phenomenal, brilliant guest. Reverend Robert Ash is with me. I'll be bringing him on stage momentarily. But listen, if you've listened to me for any amount of time, then you know I do not claim to be a scholar. I do not claim to be a professional historian. As a matter of fact, on a number of times, I've called myself an amateur historian. I've told you over and over again that I am not a Black church studies scholar. I'm just a guy that loves history, and I'm a guy that likes to read. And I've told you that there's nothing particularly extraordinary about me. I just love Jesus. I love history. I do that on purpose. I do that for a reason. Because I want to maintain humility. And I want you guys to know, what's up, come Lord Jesus? What's up, AB? Good to see you. I want you guys to know that while I do research as much as possible, and while I do read, and I like, I like to include footnotes and things of that nature, I am not a scholar. I am not a scholarly expert. And so I want you to fact check the things that I say. I want you to verify the things that I say. My cousin is here. Good to see you. Good to see you, right? I don't want you to just take my word for it, because there are thousands of other people that have actually went to school. They've earned PhDs in history, and they have forgotten more than I know. So I want to maintain that type of integrity on this podcast, to let you know that although I love what I do, I am not a scholar. I think it's necessary when you have a podcast like this, because I believe that it is an indictment upon a person's character if they put all this information out there, all of this rhetoric out there, and they do all of that under the guise of being some expert researcher, some historian of sorts, right? I think that it says a lot about a person's character when they do similar work and they attempt to pass themselves off as being more knowledgeable and professional and polished than they actually are. I think the right thing to do is to get in front of the camera, particularly if you have a show where you're talking about history, and to just tell the truth, and to invite people to scrutinize your research, invite people to scrutinize the information that you're putting out, and admit you may be wrong. Well, the gentleman that I'm going to talk about today, that we're going to be reviewing today, his name is Chad O. Jackson. He considers himself to be a researcher. He considers himself to be a historian. As a matter of fact, his website, I believe, is called Historical Revelata, something like that. Hey, Melody, good to see you. She's saying, Pastor Isaiah, Black Church Chats. I'm finishing up some work, but listen, I'm glad you listen. I'm glad you listen. Pastor Troy, salute to you, sir. Right? When this guy Chad O. Jackson, when he's in front of his largely white audience, he attempts to pass himself off as more of an expert than he actually is, as somebody that is an objective, fair dealing prognosticator. He attempts to pass himself off as somebody that's just doing honest history. And what you're about to see today is that could not be further from the truth. Chad O. Jackson is not a historian. He's not an intrepid, dogged researcher. He is, in fact, a Confederate apologist. There's a quote that's attributed to Mark Twain. Don't know if he actually said it, but it's attributed to him. That history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. So you shouldn't be surprised when conservatives today, racist conservatives, might I add, use well-worn, tired, debunked argumentation to besmirch the character and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. You shouldn't be surprised when that happens. What you need to be aware of, though, is that a lot of these guys are passing this stuff off as new, as novel, as hidden. These are hidden truths, secrets that have been suppressed. It's like the Hebrew Israelites, y'all. It's like the Hebrew Israelites. They go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories that have been debunked. You know, all the stuff about the Council of Nicaea and all that stuff. All the stuff that's out there that's like readily available if you just want to do research, right? But they present it as, ooh, the black preacher is covering this up. The government is covering this up. But all this stuff is out there. They appeal to people's ignorance. and laziness. But because we live in the click and paste culture and society, unfortunately, these people become internet famous. They amass followers, and they earn money grifting and trafficking in ahistorical claims and revisionism. And that's exactly what Chad O. Jackson is doing. Now, again, I'm about to bring my guest up. In just a second. And we've got some clips that we're going to play, that we're going to go through, a few clips that we're going to go through. I have like 10, 11 clips, y'all. I don't know if there's going to be any type of copyright strike. I'll learn about that, of course, after we're done. YouTube will tell me whether I can use these clips or not. I'm using them now. So if you're here and you're live, you're actually in a good spot, because after this is done and over with, YouTube might tell me I have to trim something out or clip something out. We'll see. But I just want you to listen, and I want you to pay attention. Okay. And if you are an apologist and you consider yourself to be a lover of truth, I want you to lean in, because I want you to see how easy it is to pull the wool over people's eyes and to do a sleight of hand and make yourself appear like an expert as you're doing it. All right. Also, most of us here on this podcast, like we're not going to be fooled by Chad O. Jackson. Like we see, we know, we understand, right? I preach to the choir most of the time here on this podcast. I understand that. But why should we still have conversations like this? Chad O. Jackson is not actively trying to win us over. He's not trying to win the hearts and minds of people he disagrees with. It's not what he's doing. He's trying to influence policy. He knows that there's a president in office who's about as dumb as a bag of rocks, but this president will use his pseudo scholarship as cover to attempt to remove Martin Luther King's holiday off the calendar as a federal holiday, to attempt to remove Juneteenth. And Donald Trump will point to people like Chad O. Jackson and his pseudo scholarship as reason for taking this legislative action. Not just Donald Trump, but also all of the racist MAGA Republicans in Congress and the Senate. So that's what he's really after. He's not trying to court people that disagree with him. He's throwing red meat to the MAGA. He's like the super token for white nationalists and racists. He's giving them what they want, but this is about policy. He's opposed to the Civil Rights Act. He's opposed to the Civil Rights Movement, as you'll see. And ultimately, he wants his work to be used to remove the Martin Luther King holiday from the calendar, and to remove the warm regard that we have for Martin Luther King from our hearts. And so we're going to talk about it. I'm joined today by my friend, my brother, Right Reverend Robert Ash. Robert, where are you? I don't see you on stage. What happened? Robert, you there?
Yeah, I guess.
I can't see you. Hold on. Do y'all see Robert? Oh, wait. I know why I don't see Robert. There we go. That's why I don't see Robert, because I didn't have it in split screen mode. Now I see Robert, and he is here. What's up? Reverend Ash, how are you?
Hey, my brother, Pastor Isaiah. How you doing, my brother?
Not too bad,
Good to
man.
be here.
Not too bad. What did you think about the show setup, man? Anything that you want to add?
Oh, I think you're right. I think that we'll be exploring more of this, but I think like we're sharing just backstage, just a preview, is this guy. I really wasn't aware. I'm like our brother Rick Barboa. I didn't know about him personally, but I was about Chad O. Jackson. But I was shocked at the material I saw, and it was it's like it was like it's like seeing a real life version of Stephen in the movie Django, right? That I mean, this guy defended the Confederacy and defended the slave master to till the burning house fell on his head and he died. And that strikes me as this kind of guy. I mean, I knew there are people that are allies of white racists and white nationalist people, like Candace Owens, for the everyday racist, and then Thomas Sowell for the intellectual racist, Vadi Bakum for the religious racist, and then Clarence Thomas for the legal type racist. I knew about those types of people, but I didn't know someone existed who was such who had such sycophantic devotion to the Confederacy. I mean, that's a new level that I wasn't aware of before checking this guy out, and it's shocking. I mean, it's appalling. There's actually I wanted to let me share a scripture. It's a scripture. It's actually from Maccabees. It's a historical this is in First Maccabees chapter 9, as to why people could do something like this to people of their own background. And this is after Judas Maccabeus died, right? The Maccabean revolt, and the Judas Maccabeus died. It says here, this is chapter 9, verse 23. After Judas's death, the lawless emerged in all regions of Israel, and all those who rose up to work evil. In those days, there was a very great famine, and the nation deserted with the evildoers to Bacchides. Now, Bacchides was the general who had been assaulting and attacking Israel during this time period, right? And these people from Israel, from amongst their number, actually went out and helped this guy. And there's another one in chapter 14 where there was a guy who actually went over and helped him in order to gain a priesthood, right? And that speaks to your point as far as having this podium, this audience to speak to, and be able to pay them. I'm sure gets paid well. Those videos get a disturbing number of views. He's called to talk everywhere. So he's getting AdSense revenue. He's getting all kinds of different things. And Candace Owens actually, from research I did on her a while back, or at least an article I saw that detailed things about her life. She made herself a millionaire. She went from broke to $3 million net worth in just a few years after flipping over to that side. And so they're getting something out of it, whether it's personal satisfaction or vendetta of some kind, or just plain old lining their palms with silver. There's something in them that drives them to do this sort of thing, and it's really sad.
I think there's more than one thing going on with Chad O. Jackson. I'm going to play the clip that I played for you, Dr. Ash, when we talked offline. I'm going to play that toward the end. I think that elucidates for us some of his motivation. You talked about vendetta. I think there is some of that. I think Chad's motivations are, I think his are complex. And maybe we'll talk about it toward the end, but right now let's hop into some of the clips. So this is how we're going to do it, Reverend Ash. We'll play the clip, and at any moment, if you want to interject, if you want me to stop, just let me know. If I want to stop and I want to interject, I'll do that. But I want everybody to listen, and I want everybody to kind of lean in, because again, the claim is Chad O. Jackson is not a historian. He is, in fact, a Confederate apologist. That's what he is. And he does everything that he does from that perspective. And from, hey, Miss 4th of July, good to see you, sis. He does everything he does, all his so-called research All of it is from that perspective. So here's clip number one. This is at a conference that Chad Jackson is lecturing at. It's called the Henkel Conference, which is a Lutheran conference. And I think it was somewhere in North Carolina, somewhere in the South. Of course, all white audience. Listen to Chad Jackson.
Slavery existed in America. It existed in several southern states. And they were threatening to secede from the Union, not because of slavery, but because of states' rights, because they were still bitter about how the Constitution was ratified on the first part, but also the fact that you saw these kind of maneuvers that were being made since the ratification of the northern states imposing their will all the more on the southern states.
Okay, we can stop there. All right. All right. So I'd like to see if I can share a screen here. Because let me see. Hold on. Really quickly. If I can't, then I'll just read it. Okay, share screen. Screen sharing. Share the screen. Ooh. Just a second. I don't know if I can. Let's see. Entire screen. Okay, I'll do this. Okay. Can you see it? No, you can't.
Nope, you can't see it.
Window. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, can you see this?
Can't see anything yet.
You can't?
No.
It says it's sharing.
Nope. We can see you, but we can't see what you're sharing.
All right, no problem. So let me just read it then. This is a site that actually has, and I send it to you. You can send it. You can put it in the description, for viewers if you'd like. But this is actually a collection of all the Confederate states' declarations of secession. All right, so I'd like to read some parts of this. Let's see here. All right. Okay, so let's start with, okay, there was Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, and Virginia. Okay, so let's look at Georgia. It says, the people of Georgia have dissolved their political connection with the government of the United States of America, present to their Confederates and the world. The causes of the people of Georgia having dissolved these political connections, present to their Confederates and the world the causes which have led to their separation. For the last 10 years, we have had numerous and serious causes of complaint against our non-slave holding Confederate states with reference to the subject of African slavery, right? So that is a brief history, and then it goes on to say about our Northern Confederates, after a full and calm hearing of all the facts and fair warning and so forth, a brief history of the rise, progress, and policy of anti-slavery in the political organization in the hands of the administration of the federal government. It is said the party of Lincoln, called the Republican Party under its present name and organization, is of recent origin. It is admitted to be an anti-slavery party. And it goes on, and it goes on and it describes this in a pretty sickening amount of detail. And then we can go down and see what other, and the one that I really want to show you is in Mississippi, okay? Our position, this is the state of Mississippi as it secedes from the Union. Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world, okay? And then it goes on, and it goes on in a lot of detail. Then let's see, South Carolina. Yeah. For many years, these laws were executed, but an increasing hostility on the part of non-slaving holding states to the institution of slavery has led to a disregard of their obligations. Right, so they're obligated to support this diabolical institution. Texas is actually the most disgusting and interesting at the same time. It says that Texas abandoned her separate national existence and consented to become one of the Confederated Union to promote her welfare. They neglect they neglect the fact, of course, that they stole the land from Mexico. And that's how they elected to do that. Texas, was received as a commonwealth holding and maintaining and protecting the institution known as Negro slavery, the servitude of the African to the white race within her borders, a relation that has existed from the first settlement of Texas's wilderness by the white race, and which her people intended should exist in all future time. Okay, so I think that's enough. There's more in here, of course, but this absolutely belies and shows as a lie the statement that Chad O. Jackson first made, the statements that pro-Confederates made during the Confederacy, and that racists made during the Jim Crow, made during Jim Crow, and that racists make even today. This you talk about revisionist history. You look at this statement from Texas, from Mississippi, from these southern states that seceded. They seceded because they wanted slavery. Slavery was the reason that they seceded from the Union. Period.
Full stop. I mean, so what Dr. Ash just gave all of us is the reasoning southern states gave for seceding from the Union. Okay, clearly chattel slavery, American chattel slavery, right? We're deucing out because we want to maintain the institution of chattel slavery. Not just that, I'm a up the ante a little bit, but the vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, gave a speech, cornerstone speech. I'm going to read a portion of his speech where he just says like bluntly, like we are seceding from the Union because of slavery. So I'm going to read a portion of Vice President Stephens' speech. I'll start here. This is what he says. Listen, he's talking about the new Constitution of the Confederacy. He says the new Constitution has put at rest forever all the agitating questions relating to our particular institution, African slavery, as it exists among us, the proper status of the Negro in our form of civilization. This was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution. Jefferson, in his forecast, had anticipated this as the rock upon which the old Union would split. He was right. What was conjecture with him is now a realized fact. But whether he fully comprehended the great truth upon which that rock stood and stands may be doubted. The prevailing ideas entertained by him and most other leading statesmen at the time of the formation of the old Constitution were that the enslavement of the African was in violation of the laws of nature, that it was wrong in principle, socially, morally, and politically. It was an evil they knew not well how to deal with, but the general opinion of the men of that day was that somehow or other, in the order of providence, the institution would be evanescent and pass away. This idea, though not incorporated in the Constitution, was the prevailing idea at that time. The Constitution, it is true, secured every essential guarantee to the institution while it should last, and hence no argument can be justly urged against the constitutional guarantees thus secured because of the common sentiment of the day. Listen to this, everybody. Listen to this. Those ideas, however, were fundamentally wrong. They rested upon the assumption of the equality of the races. This was an error. It was a sandy foundation, and the government built upon it fell when the storm came and the wind blew. Our new government, referring to the Confederacy, is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This our new government is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth. This is from the vice president of the Confederacy, saying clearly and plainly, the Confederacy exists to protect and enshrine white supremacy and American chattel slavery. What's up? What's up, JM? Good to see you, Chris, as well. So now here's Chad Johnson and others saying, oh, no, don't believe any of that. Don't believe any of those states, those southern states. Don't believe Mississippi. Don't believe Texas. Don't believe Alexander Stevens. The real issue was states' rights. And we're going to talk about that. Dr. Ash has already referred to it, where this came from. Because you have to ask the question, like, okay, so if they said it this plainly, this bluntly, right? If they were this unambiguous, then how later could they claim that it didn't have anything to do with slavery? Like how did it evolve into the Civil War being about states' rights when they said out loud in documents, in speeches, that it was about slavery? We're going to talk about that. And we're going to also talk about the legacy of states' rights, because the question becomes, states' rights to do what?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Also,
states' rights. Go ahead.
And also, Pastor, this same lie, this same demonic lie echoed in the defense of Jim Crow, right? Where they're talking the same idea, the same false fabricated narrative of states' rights came when, people like George Wallace before his conversion, and other, like Ku Klux Klan leaders and governments in Mississippi, they said segregation now, segregation forever.
I actually have some clips that I'm gonna play that show the descendants of these Confederate politicians echoing this states' rights lie to oppose civil rights, to oppose the enfranchisement of Black people, all based on quote unquote states' rights. All right, but let's continue the clip, because he brings something up here that I also want to talk about. This thing called the Corwin Amendment. He brings something up, and he's only going to show how much of a hack that he is as he just kind of speeds by the Corwin Amendment. The Corwin Amendment, his explanation is extremely subpar, which further elucidates the fact that he is not a careful historian. He is a Confederate apologist. So let's continue the clip.
They were threatening on multiple occasions to secede from the Union. And after the election of Abraham Lincoln, in order to try to come up with another compromise, there was something called the Corwin Amendment. And what the Corwin Amendment proposed was that, look, you in the southern states, you get to keep your slaves, but we can't allow slavery to extend to other states. The South, by and large, rejected the Corwin Amendment because for them, it wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights.
So Dr. Ash, he is right about the Corwin Amendment that was introduced, that essentially said, all right, you guys can keep your slaves to avoid civil war. And the South, by and large, rejected it. But he says they rejected it because it wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. And then he just goes on in his lecture. What he doesn't tell the audience is that Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, South Carolina, and Texas had already begun seceding. They had already seceded before the amendment was even introduced. They were rushing toward conflict, rushing toward a civil war. They were not, they didn't have any interest whatsoever to negotiate. They already had seceded from the Union. Also, what the Corwin Amendment said is, you guys in the South, you can keep slavery. However, slavery cannot expand into new territories. And that was a key Southern demand. That was a key Southern demand. They wanted all U.S. territory and all U.S. land to be slave owning. And so a careful historian would have articulated that, would have nuanced that. They would have brought up the Corwin Amendment, and they would have said that they would have highlighted these aspects and these factors. But he doesn't. He simply asserts that they didn't ratify the amendment because of states' rights. Did you want to add anything there?
Well, I think we're going to see this in his methodology, and it's going to be, it is actually a defining characteristic of his so-called methodology. And there's two things. One is that in other clips that you shared with me, he had one consistent trait, is that he would do things like hold up a bunch of books, make claims about, say, Martin Luther King's papers, but he never quoted even one of them.
We're going there, y'all.
Quoted one. Yeah, he never quoted one. He just made these broad brush claims, and he claims to be to incorporate logic, and actually that's one of the basic fundamental fallacies in logic, or sign of poor logic, and it's called proof by assertion, right? So that you just assert something, you say that it's right, and you just don't prove it, and then broad brush or generalization is another one. He does a really poor job of that, and really what he's doing, and this is just to set the context, and so you can so the viewers will know what to look for, is that he does not do research in the sense that you and I and the viewers here think of the word, define the word. His actual definition of research, which he doesn't say, but he demonstrates, is to comb through Confederate talking points, Confederate claims, Confederate views on everything, and spout those, right? And try to make it sound like he knows what he's talking about. And he's really sort of a low-key Stephen from Django, right? He's a more calm, low-key version of that, and sounds more intellectual than he is. And he also overrepresents himself in some other areas, which I can share if we get to that clip. But
yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, but the guy is he's I think your word was hack. I think that's a kind way to put it. But the man is just not competent at all in his field. What he is competent in doing is regurgitating things that people want to hear, combing through the whatever Confederate talking points Wikipedia that he uses to do his so-called research, and then just package that in a way that sounds acceptable. And I think you've touched on that already. But there's no genuine scholarship in what he does.
Yeah. For those of you guys that are new to this conversation around the Civil War and the reasons behind the Civil War, I asked the question earlier, like, what would make the South proponents of the Confederacy, what would make them like do a complete 180 and claim that the reason behind the Civil War was states' rights and not slavery, after clearly by Confederate politicians, they clearly stated from the vice president of the Confederacy on down that it was about slavery. Like, clear, states stated it before they seceded. The politicians stated it clearly. What would make them do an about face later on and say, oh, no, we tricked you. Wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. If you're new to this discussion, I want you to watch this brief clip, okay? Because I want to make sure that we pull everyone into this discussion, no matter what level you're on in terms of your knowledge about these things. So check this brief clip out about what's called the lost cause myth. Check it out.
66. Barely a year after the war ended, Southern sources began claiming the conflict wasn't actually about slavery. Meanwhile, Frederick Douglass, a prominent abolitionist and formerly enslaved person, cautioned, "The spirit of secession is stronger today than ever." From the words of Confederate leaders, the reason for the war could not have been clearer. It was slavery. So how did this revisionist history come about? The answer lies in the lost cause, a cultural myth about the Confederacy. The term was coined by Edward Pollard, a pro-Confederate journalist. In 1866, he published The Lost Cause, a new Southern history of the War of the Confederates. Pollard pointed out that the U.S. Constitution gave states the right to govern themselves independently in all areas except those explicitly designated to the national government. According to him, the Confederacy wasn't defending slavery. It was defending each state's right to choose whether or not to allow slavery. This explanation effectively turned white Southerners' documented defense of slavery and white supremacy into a patriotic defense of the Constitution. The Civil War had devastated the country, leaving those who had supported the Confederacy grasping to justify their actions. Many pro-Confederate writers, political leaders, and others were quick to adopt and spread the narrative of the lost cause. One organization, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, played a key role in transmitting the ideas of the lost cause to future generations. Founded in Nashville, Tennessee in 1894, the UDC united thousands of middle and upper-class white Southern women. The UDC raised thousands of dollars to build monuments to Confederate soldiers. These were often unveiled with large public ceremonies and given prominent placements, especially on courthouse lawns. The Daughters also placed Confederate portraits in public schools. They monitored textbooks to minimize the horrors of slavery and its significance in the Civil War, passing revisionist history and racist ideology down through generations. By 1918, the UDC claimed over 100,000 members. As their numbers grew, they increased their influence outside the South. Presidents William Howard Taft and Woodrow Wilson both met with UDC members and enabled them to memorialize the Confederacy in Arlington National Cemetery. The UDC still exists and defends Confederate symbols as part of a noble heritage of sacrifice by their ancestors. Despite the wealth of primary sources showing that slavery was the root cause of the Civil War, the myth about states' rights persists today.
So that gives you a little bit of the history behind the lost cause myth that Chad O. Jackson is parroting as if it's fact. And he's parroting as if it's fact. He's in the clip that we're reviewing. He's in front of a Southern audience, a white Southern audience. So they would be the descendants of the Confederate soldiers and politicians. He's parroting these claims in front of them, in fact, because he is a Confederate apologist and he's not a dogged, careful historian. All right.
No. And also, brother, I'd like to just share a couple of things. Actually, from a spiritual level, what happened in this country, one thing from an economic level first is that if they admit that slavery and especially the exploitation portion of it aspect was the cause of why they seceded, then there would be pretty rich grounds in the minds of people for some kinds of reparations, right? So if you are being defeated for a wrong that you've done, whether it's Bonnie and Clyde being killed in a shootout, whatever, with the police, or whether it's the Confederates being being defeated by the North, and it's a wrong that you've done, and slavery is an unambiguous wrong. It wasn't in the white psyche back then so much, but there was a widespread understanding, whether admitted or not, that slavery was wrong. So if you're defeated for something that's wrong, then you owe somebody something, right? You owe the people that you've wronged. And so what they did, just from an economic standpoint, was to turn this around into a morally neutral sounding cause that was around purportedly shared values for the entire country, and therefore it was a difference of opinion more than a wrong, right? And this is one of the most subtle, effective, and diabolical forms of lying.
Yeah.
So another thing too is that there's comments on the clip where they said that, you know, first of all, these were the daughters of the Confederacy, of the Confederacy, and they erected these Confederate monuments everywhere. What happened in the beginning, when the so-called Puritans landed on these shores and then started, you know, with the John Punch trial in 1640, which actually formalized legally what became this demonic institution of chattel slavery, is that the white church as a whole, not all, but as a whole, developed a parallel religion. It was a false cult based on effectively an unholy trinity of race, money, and unanswerable power over people they despised or looked down on. And that unholy trinity is what has guided the whole major part of white people from then until now. And that is why Donald Trump got so much of the white vote every single time, despite his deplorable track record. And from a spiritual standpoint, right, the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places. The coordinated and consistent tone and manner and execution of this speaks of spiritual corruption in high places, spiritual wickedness. And really, we can see two things here. One is from the Bible. One is how Israel, in the days of the judges before they got exiled, they built idols to Baal under every green tree.
Yeah.
Right. And see, this is their Baal, the Confederacy and this race. This is their Baal. They don't, and this is what they actually worship, the people who think like this. And then also in Jeremiah chapter 44, there's a passage of how there's this trouble that God is bringing on the land, and they start complaining because they said, well, look, ever since we stopped burning incense to the Queen of Heaven, we've had all these problems.
Yeah.
Right? When we were burning incense to the Queen of Heaven, we didn't have these problems.
Yeah.
And that's an exact parallel of what this rhetoric is today. Back before we had all of this civil rights and DEI and CRT and affirmative action, we had a good life. Back when America was great. And when anytime you ask a MAGA, when was America great? They will always give you a date before the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964. They'll point back to the 50s or to the antebellum South. That's when they were worshiping the Queen of Heaven, this racial god that they'd created, this false god of racial superiority, and this oppression that they worshipped that kept them doing very well, like in Leave It to Beaver, type, if you those old shows, like those old black and white cowboy shows and things like that, where everything was great, John Wayne and so forth, right? That sanitized world that they created for themselves at the horrific and deadly and rapacious expense of others.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the days that they long for, and that Chad O. Jackson is trying to help them get back to, which is diabolical.
Yeah. Amen. Let's continue this clip here, because he's going to go on to spew more lost cause mythology that we have to call him out on. Now, we are going to get to another clip where he talks about MLK. That's his current claim to fame. That's his current grift. He is actively disparaging the legacy of MLK, so much so that he has created a docuseries entitled The MLK Project, and he influenced Charlie Kirk along with the other guy. I can't remember his name right now. The other black conservative guy that's like Uncle Ruckus in a suit. I forget what his name is, but they both influenced Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, and their views on the civil rights movement and MLK. We're going to get to to him speaking about MLK in just a second, but we want to finish addressing this clip and the lost cause mythology that he's spewing. So I'm gonna put him back on stage.
after they seceded from the Union, Jefferson Davis would become the president of the Confederacy. And if you look at his writings, and if you look at the writings of Robert E. Lee, you'll find that they didn't believe that slavery should exist in perpetuity. They believed that the South should have the right to end slavery in the same fashion as the North.
Again, let me stop that real quick. Remember what Stephen said in his speech as he's referring to the Constitution of the Confederacy. Stephen said, our new government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth. So he's trying to, trying to espouse gradualism, that they would have just allowed slavery to just end on its own. How? When they believe that the Negro's natural state was to be subservient to white people. How? But I digress. Let me put him back on stage.
When you look at the slave narratives that exist, and you understand that slavery existed for the better part of human history and still exists to this very day, and that industrialization was beginning to change the way that economics is done. And when you look at, again, the slave narratives and realize that the life of the slave on the plantation was not, by and large, this kind of rough thing where you were being beaten across the back every day.
Let's stop.
I know
there.
that's outrageous to hear.
Let me let him just finish his sentence, and then we'll come back, because I know you got some stuff. I got some stuff too. Let me hold on 1 second.
This is an advocacy for slavery. No, it's not. But I think when it comes to history, we have to deal with the facts as they are.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it right there. All right, go ahead, Dr. Ash.
Okay, I'd like to recommend 3 books. Here's one. This is called River of Blood, and it's by Richard Cahan and Michael Williams. It's by City Lights Press. There's another one called No Sanctuary, and then there's a third one by Toni Morrison called The Black Book. But this is firsthand accounts of people that were enslaved. So here is one, just a couple. I don't want to read too many of these, but how about this? This guy, this brother was enslaved in Virginia, near Lynchburg, Virginia. And he starts out his testimony with, I never had no good times until I was free. There's a lot to read, so I'll just read a short portion for any of them. And then, and I just won't use the N-word because they do. This lady here, Hagar Lewis, was enslaved in Texas. Some poor Negroes were half starved. They belonged to other people. Mrs. Mary would call them in to feed them. See them outside the fence picking up scraps. They'd call out at night, Marse John, Marse John. They're afraid to come out in the daytime. What's it matter now? They'd say, I'm hungry. He'd say, come and get it. He'd cure lots of meat, for we'd hear them hollering at night when they'd beat the poor Negroes for begging or stealing or some crime, just trying to eat. And there's dozens and dozens of these. There's accounts here of people that saw other people. They tore apart slaves with dogs, set dogs on them, tore them apart, beat a woman, a pregnant woman, had them dig a hole in the ground and beat her until she lost her mind. She was never right after that. This was the daily. Look at all the. I mean, there are thousands and thousands. All of those thousands of slave narratives that Chad O. Jackson talks about, he's lying through his teeth, as far as I can tell, because they all point to the same deplorable, satanic, demonic savagery that was the daily lot of slaves.
Yeah. And listen. I'm sorry, y'all. My phone's ringing. I have read the slave narratives. I've listened to historians talk about the slave narratives. Okay. And again, what Chattel Jackson is spewing is lost cause mythology. All this is a part of lost cause mythology. Oh, slavery wasn't that bad. Enslaved people, they actually enjoyed it was easy. They had food and shelter, and they were for all intents and purposes, they were happy, right? That's all lost cause mythology. Now, when it comes to the slave narratives, in those cases where you have a formerly enslaved person speaking positively of their master or their mistress, careful historians will point out the fact that these slave narratives were compiled in the 30s in the South. So if I'm formerly enslaved and I live in a town where across town are the descendants of my master and mistress, and maybe my master and mistress is still alive, all right, it's the South, so there's racial terror happening all around me, lynchings happening all around me, and I'm asked by an interviewer, and I know my statements will go public. What was your master like? What was your mistress like? What was life like on the plantation? So historians will say that we don't know how much of those statements were given under duress, how much of those statements we can actually, we can actually count as true and accurate, because a lot of times you're asking formerly enslaved people these questions in the South, and they live across town from the people that enslaved them, and they still got to live, and they've got to make a living, and they've got to get on public transportation, things of that nature. Okay, so careful historians will bring that point out. Also, listen, guys. What if you grow up only eating bologna sandwiches, okay, then a hot dog may be good to you. You may think a hot dog is the best thing in the world because you grew up on cold bologna sandwiches. Now here comes this hot dog with ketchup and mustard, and oh my goodness, all right? So what do we talk when we talk about the slave narratives and enslaved people having fond memories and saying that their experience was quote unquote good? What are they comparing that to? Let me give you an example. Here's an entire book, Slave Testimonies, Blasting Game, and I encourage you. See, Jackson banks on the fact that you guys haven't read this. He banks on the fact that you're just going to listen to him and take his word for it. He banks on the fact that you're not going to go back and actually research the slave narratives yourself. You're gonna just listen to him and say, "Oh yeah, okay, well this guy's read the slave narratives, so he knows what he's talking about." But listen to this. Listen, I want to read you this account. This is an account. The formerly enslaved woman named Charity Bowery. Okay, she was enslaved in North Carolina. Listen to what she says, y'all. She says, "I'm about 65 years old. I was born on an estate called Pembroke, about 3 miles from Edenton, North Carolina." Listen to what she says. "My master was very kind to his slaves." Oh, okay. So it sounds like Chattel Jackson is onto something, right? Keep reading. She says, "If an overseer whipped them, he turned him away." So the slave master would turn away the overseer. And she goes on to say, he, the master, used to whip them himself, sometimes with hickory switches as large as my little finger. So here's an account of a formerly enslaved person saying that her master was, quote unquote, kind to his slaves. And what was the measure? She said he was kind because she didn't allow the overseers to whip the slaves. The master would whip the slaves himself. And because of that, the master was kind.
And he used a hickory stick instead of a bullwhip.
Yes, a hickory stick instead of a bullwhip. Right.
Yeah.
So do you see how their notion of kind is being filtered through existing within chattel slavery, American chattel slavery. So yes, it's better to be whipped by hickory than a bullwhip, but is it really kind for another human being to whoop another human being and own them?
Yeah. It's like the Proverbs, it says in Proverbs, the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. Right. And so that's really a fulfillment of that scripture. Another thing, too, just from a historical standpoint and from a research standpoint, frankly, is that there's a categorical difference in the slave narratives of the freed slaves in the North from the freed slaves in the South.
Yes.
So when you look at the, like What to the Slave is the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass, or you look at the, Richard Allen or Robert Purvis or Harriet Tubman's Sojourner Truth and so forth, and their accounts of slavery when they were across the Mason-Dixon line and able to speak freely without any repercussions being feared. That set of slave narratives is extraordinarily and markedly different from the ones where they were living right across the town from the people who could kill them the next day.
That's right. Harriet Jacobs, 1861. Slavery is terrible for men, but it's far more terrible for women. My master began to whisper foul words in my ear. He told me I was his property, that I must be subject to his will in all things. The poor slave girl is reared in an atmosphere of fear and degradation. She can never forget that she's a slave. That's Harriet Jacobs. Solomon Northup, 12 years a slave. Okay, 1853. The lash was ever ready. The slightest offense was punished with the utmost severity. The cries of the poor tortured slave rang in my ears long after the infliction had ceased. He says there was no power to restrain the master's cruelty, no protection for the slave. Lou Smith from Texas said, I've seen slaves whipped till the blood run down their backs to their heels. I've seen them sold away from their mothers. Fountain Hughes, who was born enslaved, said, we was never called anything but the N-word. We didn't know anything but fear. On and 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 on, right? But when you've embraced lost cause mythology, none of those voices matter.
Right. And one of the things that's really genius about these African Americans is like the first account that you shared, where she was actually speaking in code, right?
Yes.
So she was saying how kind he was, but then she was showing examples of how cruel he was.
Yes.
Right. And that's genius. I mean, that really is. That's the way to get the message across while still sparing your own life.
Yep.
And life of your family.
If you read that narrative further, she talks about how her kind masters eventually sold her off away from her, sold her off to another plantation where she then had a very cruel mistress. So they commodified her, whipped her, but she calls them kind. So
yeah,
there you have it.
Because she had no choice.
Yes. All right. Let's look at another clip. Now, this is what some of you guys have all been waiting for. And I know it's 5:06. We're over an hour in. We just might have to go a little bit longer tonight because we definitely want to review this clip. But Chad Jackson has created a docuseries, the MLK Project, where he's essentially rehashing John Bircher, lies, all the lies, the FBI lies, Hoover lies, things of that nature. And full disclosure, I have not seen the docuseries. He has it right now behind a paywall, and I refuse to put one penny in this dude's pocket. All right. So, but when you've seen his interviews about MLK, it's just all the same stuff in that documentary, and he probably carefully curates clips to bolster his own false claims. Documentaries can be propaganda. Just because it's a documentary doesn't mean it's true. I remember conservatives livid over Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11. Remember when Fahrenheit 9/11 came out? All right, and conservatives were like, it's false history. It's a false documentary. Everything is false. It's just propaganda. But now, when a conservative like Dinesh D'Souza or Chad Jackson puts something out, it's the gospel. But I digress. And by the way, y'all, forgive me. I'm a little amped up. I am on an energy drink right now. And so I know you guys see me animated. I'm going to try to breathe. I'm very passionate about this. All right. This is something that I take seriously. because the lives are at stake. His rhetoric, his lies, it produces collateral damage. But let's now get into this clip here, where he's going to bring up some of his background, and then he's going to get into his lies about MLK and the Civil Rights Movement.
Actually, also am a master plumber. I've held a master plumbing license here in the state of Texas for roughly 10 years. And the reason I bring that up is because, the plumbing trade, just like all other skilled trades, is dictated by the hard sciences. It's not something that's abstract that you can just figure out as you go. It's something that has guardrails, that is rooted in how the world is formed and how the world is shaped. Now, to the extent that you don't have a working knowledge of science and mathematical equations, you're not able to do your job adequately as a skilled tradesman. And to the extent that you make a mistake or...
Go for it, Dr. Ash.
Yeah, I'd like to, just share that, when he's talking about sciences and so forth, I happen to have, a science background myself. I studied sciences at Berkeley, including molecular biology, chemistry, mathematics, differential equations, calculus, statistics, discrete mathematics, and so forth. I'd like to share from the, and this is from the this is from the Plumbers Training Institute. And it says here, dust off your math skills. This is the level of mathematics it actually takes to be a plumber. Now, I'm not claiming that I can do plumbing, right? Plumbing is a skilled trade, but to pass oneself off as a mathematician is a little different. Here's what it says. Being a plumber involves a lot of math. Now, here's what they mean by that, though. License exams test practical plumbing, including your math skills. It's vital to understand the algebra and geometry concepts required to calculate the surface area and volume of various pipes, fittings, and fixtures. Now, this is, and I've looked again on different plumbers forums and things. This is stuff that you're going to learn in the 10th grade. So this is basic, very basic algebra, because you got to figure out, well, if a piece is missing, how long does it need to be? So that's like solving for X. And then also it says you also need to understand things like bend angle and temperature conversions. That means how to convert Fahrenheit to centigrade. Fahrenheit equals 9/5 centigrade plus 32. Centigrade equals 5/9 Fahrenheit minus 32. Right? Once you know those two, that's not really complex to do. If math isn't your strong suit, ensure that you pass your exam. Ensure that you focus on this area. And this means addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, temperature conversions, what the angle of a bend is, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, and how to do the surface area of, say, a slat of concrete, so that you know how long the pipes need to be. And that is not, the skill needed to actually do that is very high, to put together a plumbing. But to represent yourself as having some kind of requirement for stringent mathematics. And I spent my entire career in the technology industry doing research and development and artificial intelligence, right? That is a level, that's sort of the impression that he's trying to create with this math and hard sciences thing, right? Hard sciences, you don't have to do like chemical analysis of soil. You have to know that, well, in this mud, you use this kind of pipe, and this mud, and this sandy soil, you use that kind of pipe. You need to know, you're not designing the materials for the pipe. What you're doing is you're taking the pipe and saying, okay, this is, copper pipe, or this is, PVC, or this is, whatever, stainless steel. And you're making sure that your threads, line up and stuff. And you have to do that with precision, but you don't design any of those materials. That's where the real mathematics comes in. What he's talking about is glorified arithmetic, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? You have to be good at that. And in basic algebra and geometry that you learn from, say, the 7th to the 10th grade. And the actual degree of science that he's talking about isn't like advanced geophysics, where you have to know, be able to calculate, the earth, the shifts of earth of different types of materials and things like that. You can look that up, right? So he's really, and his idea of research is really just looking through, Confederate talking points and putting together a presentation. That's his idea of research. So he is vastly overrepresenting every single skill that he has. Now, assuming that's an actual master plumber's license, he may not be, overrepresenting that, but he's spreading falsehoods in other areas. Maybe that's not true either. But if let's assume that it is. But he's representing himself as having a much deeper and more significant level of expertise in science, mathematics, logic, and research than, it's a universe. He's a universe away from the impression he's trying to create.
Yep. So with that in mind, let's listen to the rest of what he has to say. And we're going to, of course, interrupt him here and there, but let me put him back on stage.
Calculate something properly, it can cause issues, and in some cases, catastrophic issues. And so it is necessary for you to then go back, figure out what mistake you made, correct that issue, so that way you can do your job adequately. Now, I try to apply that same logic into how I operate as a filmmaker and a researcher and a commentator on social and cultural issues, because it's very easy.
No, it doesn't. Okay, that's
no,
all.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. No.
Abstract. It's very easy to talk about a lot of ideas that don't actually work in the real world. And it's important to apply that same logic when it comes to so-called Black America and where Black America went wrong. And so the way that I think about it is this. When you look at so-called Black America from around about the end of slavery till around the 1950s, you saw a trending in the right direction in terms of faith. Most Black Americans, especially in the South, were church-going. You saw it in terms of entrepreneurship and the starting of businesses. When you look at Booker T. Washington's Negro Business League and the increase of real estate agents and builders and insurers, so on and so forth. You saw it in terms of family formation. You saw it in terms of home ownership. You also saw it in terms of literacy. See if I can draw a book there. That's my book. On all these different fronts, you saw it trending in the right direction. And then you get into the 1950s and the 1960s. And we have a choice to make. We come to a kind of fork in the road, as it were. We can either keep going in the same direction, or we can go a different direction. And that direction is toward globalism.
So notice the boogeyman word. And Chad is adept at using boogeyman words: globalism, Marxism, communism, socialism. Okay. So a boogeyman word is thrown out. These words are meant to scare. These words are meant to discourage critical thinking. These words are meant to rile up the conservative base. As soon as you say globalism, Marxism, communism, socialism, oh, now you've got what you're saying is enemy. Okay, essentially what you're saying is, this person, you've caricatured this person, and this person is now untrustworthy. This person is an enemy. None of this person's work can be celebrated or appreciated. And Chad is a master. If he's a master at anything, he's a master at using boogeyman words to scare his largely white audiences into believing MLK and others were these things.
Okay, could I also share a few things?
Yep.
Back when he was drawing these this departure. Okay, this shows how miserably bad of a so-called researcher he is. For instance, he talks about when first of all, the so-called Black community. Either there is a Black community or there isn't. Right. And this is the same thing that Corey Minor was doing when you and, Damon Richardson, Eric Mason, Jerome Gay were talking, trying to help Corey understand that there is a Black church, that he was willing, you all pointed out that he was willing to use the term Black church when he was bad-mouthing the Black church on some racist channel, Alice Chapman or somebody, some white conservative counterpart of hers. But he refused to acknowledge it was that there was a black church when you brothers were being positive about it, right? Then he started pretending that there was a fudgy term, but he was using it when he was disparaging the black church. So here, either there is a black community or there isn't, and there certainly is. All right, now in terms of his alleged departures, first of all, he talks about departure of the black community in faith. It turns out that was universal in the American public, right? I mean, white people turned farther away from the faith than black people did. For instance, and these are a couple of studies, I can send you the links, but according in Pew Research, for instance, they found that like 73% of black Americans profess to be Christians, are confessing Christians. Another one is the Public Religion Research Institute. They clock it up at around 80%, closer to 79%, something like that. Black people have the highest rate of religious faith, the highest percentage of religious faith. With white people, it's more like from the 40s to the 60s. Depends on the surveys that you read. The highest confession of Christianity, the highest rate of church attendance, and the highest rate of church membership of any ethnic group. And that has been true for quite some decades. Now, when we're talking about moving away, we're talking about moving down to 79% or 73 or 75%, right? Whereas the white community has moved down into the 60s to 40s to the 60s. In terms of family formation, that's fallen off in every ethnic group except for immigrants and less so among Asians. But white family formations are down. In terms of literacy, the literacy rate and the achievement rate on standardized testing, this is global among developed nations and non-developed nations, lesser developed nations. The United States has slipped from like number 1 and number 2 to like number 50. Right. And there are not enough black people in the United States, being 13% of the population. It's statistically impossible for black people to account for that entire slide. The majority of that slide comes from the majority of the population, which is white people. Right now, 95% of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, 95%, over 90% rather, of STEM PhDs at U.S. universities, the students are not from the US, right? And this has been true since the 1990s. Larry Ellison, who was the CEO of Oracle, where I worked for a long time, he pointed that out back then. So all of these slides that Chad O. Jackson is talking about, literacy, family formation, faith, everything, all of those things are actually even more, is prevalent or more prevalent among white people than they are among black people. And even more so when you do income adjusted comparisons. So when he gets into like out of wedlock births or poverty or literacy or so, when you adjust for income, then and crime rates and things like that. When you look at these, when you do racial comparisons across the same income brackets, you see very comparable results. And often, sometimes black people come out better, right? Less crime, less, whatever, because of less suicides, for instance. There's, black people have the lowest rate of suicide. White males commit 70% of the suicides in the United States. White people as a whole have 35%, have 35% of out of wedlock children in the United States too, right? Black people tend to have a higher rate, but if you adjust for income, say under $20,000, $20,000 to $50,000, and you start comparing races within the same income bracket, you come up with very similar results. So he basically doesn't know what he's talking about at all, and he's doing very faulty singularity sorts of statistical cherry picking, and then ignoring the fact that what any good researcher would do would be to do a comparative study of those factors within this community versus other communities. And every good research that I've seen on this, and I've seen a number of them, they all do that, right? And he doesn't.
Yep. So let's listen to Chad O. Jackson's reasoning All right. Why? Like, so what, why did what he says, so-called Black community, slide and skid into these horrible, statistics, horrible metrics? Let's listen to Chad O. Jackson's reasoning.
Now, I say globalism, but in reality, there's a lot of ideas and ideologies that lead essentially to globalism, whether you're talking about socialism, Marxism, communism, whatever.
Okay, he's not even getting his basic definitions right. Globalism has nothing to do with any of this. What globalism is, it's international trade. It's being able to trade with other countries, import and export. That has nothing to do. And so, for instance, China has, is globalist. Sweden is globalist. U.S. is globalist. They all have very different, in fact, Saudi Arabia has a monarchy. They're globalist. They trade with the whole world, right? So he doesn't even understand the definitions of the words that he's using. Okay, let's go ahead.
Call it collectivism. They all lead toward the same path. And there were voices that were encouraging to go this direction. None other than Martin Luther King Jr. See if I can draw Martin Luther King there. Give him some eyes, a nose, a mouth, and a mustache. That's MLK.
Bruh.
Now, the interesting thing about MLK is that while he's talking about equality and justice and everything else, what he's essentially talking about is Marxist ideology. And you have to listen real close to understand what he's saying. And not only do you have to listen real.
So you hear that? Dr. King is really smuggling in Marxist ideology. The civil rights movement was all about bringing Marxism and communism into this country. And Dr. King was just a Marxist shill, a communist, in fact, working to smuggle communism and Marxism into the United States. He was a shill of the USSR. Let me let him continue. Let me let him continue, because we're gonna address that head on. But notice he said you have to listen very carefully. So essentially what he's saying is, don't listen to what the man actually said and wrote, because I'm going to bring up some quotes here in just a second from Dr. King in his own words. All right. Don't listen to any of that. Right. Listen to Chad O. Jackson, because he knows that Dr. King was a Marxist communist shill. So let's put it back.
We also have the writings of his best friend, Ralph Abernathy.
So let me stop right there. The first book that he introduces is the book by Ralph Abernathy, which was a hit piece on Dr. King, accused him of engaging in all types of salacious behavior, and he holds that up as some type of authoritative source. What he doesn't tell his audience is that the book by Ralph Abernathy was subsequently repudiated by Andrew Young, by Jesse Jackson. They both came out publicly against the book, and they also revealed that Abernathy had struggled with some mental health issues later on in his life as he was writing that book. Furthermore, Ralph Abernathy was Dr. King's successor. After Dr. King was assassinated, Ralph Abernathy became the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. By all historical accounts, his presidency was not successful. He didn't move King's agenda forward. And so there's some bitterness there. And there's some frustration there because he felt like he never fully was able to live up to King's acclaim. And so all of that has to be factored in. When that book is held up, tell the entire story. You can't just hold up the book and cite it as some type of authoritative source without telling the entire story about behind that book. Okay.
Right. And also, brother, what the audience can notice, what the viewers can notice is he's gonna hold up a series of books,
Yes.
yet he never quotes from any of them.
Right.
Right. In other words, I don't think he's even read them. He says we have these books, but he never says he's read them, and he doesn't quote from any of them. And the things that he's saying don't really match what's in any of them, which you're going to be, describing in with Dr. King's writings.
Yep. So let's watch him hold up these books.
We have a bunch of King papers that were released in volumes. These were his own writings, as well as correspondence that he wrote with other communists.
Many King papers, many of them written while he was in seminary, while he was in his late teens, early 20s. Now just imagine if people pulled up your writings when you were 18, 19, 20, when you were between 18 and 25. Okay. Just imagine, somebody tried to paint a picture of you and your character and your ideals by pointing to documents that you wrote in your early 20s. This is what they do when they refer to Dr. King's theology, things that he wrote when he went to a liberal seminary. By the way, they never mention why Dr. King had to go to a theologically liberal seminary. They never talk about, they conveniently leave out why Dr. King wasn't able to go to the theologically conservative seminaries that were open at the same time. We know why. Those that actually study history know why, because they didn't allow Black people. So as a result, Dr. King went to Crozier. He was educated in theologically liberal spaces, and yes, he wrote papers and he said things when he was a seminarian. Let's continue. Did you have anything you want to add to that?
Now, I'm saying that just to illustrate, to build on your point, how bad it was. Dallas Theological Seminary, which is like the creme de la creme of Christian radio seminaries, they didn't have their first graduate, their first Black PhD graduate until 1979, and that was Tony Evans.
Tony Evans. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Let's continue.
And agitators. We have plenty of these materials, a lot more from where that.
Notice this word that he uses, agitators. I wanted to point that out. Agitators, if we go back to those same secession documents from the Confederate States, that word, you can do a word search on those, and you'll see that word pop up a lot. It means people who are opposed to slavery. It was used again during Jim Crow period for people who were opposed to racial segregation and strict racial hierarchies. Agitators, right? So he's actually using that word from these avowed racists and pro-slavers to describe people that he is advocating against on their behalf.
They called abolitionist agitators.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Anyone against slavery was an agitator.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyone who was against Jim Crow segregation was an agitator.
Was an agitator. Absolutely.
And he uses that exact word.
Yep.
And that's the only time they use those words, is to describe people like that.
Yep. All right, let's continue.
I had here in this room. And not only that, you have a bunch of files. And all of these things really give us insight into what King was trying to do, how he didn't actually believe in the Christian faith, even though he was a pastor, how he believed in the Marxist ideology, but understanding that we were in the midst of a Cold War, he couldn't just come out and say that he's a communist. He had to do it in a more covert way.
So that right there is disgusting. That right there is particularly disgusting. What did Yahweh say to Samuel as he was about to anoint David's other brothers instead of David? Yahweh says to Samuel, wait, hold up. God doesn't see as man sees. Yahweh says to Samuel, man looks at the outward appearance. God looks at the heart. Chattel Jackson is claiming to know Dr. King's heart. And he's essentially telling people, ignore everything that Dr. King said or wrote. I'm about to read you guys some quotes from Dr. King. Now, what Chattel Jackson will say is, well, you know, he had speech writers, he had ghost writers. You know, Chattel Jackson is essentially saying he knows that Dr. King didn't believe any of these things that were in his books, speeches that he spoke. Right? He's essentially saying that Dr. King just got up there and said these things when really deep down inside, in his heart, he believed in Marxist ideology. And that right there is every Christian ought to repudiate that, and every Christian ought to be repulsed by that type of thinking that you have Chattel Jackson in 2025 saying about a dead man, I know what he believed, even though he said different. Listen to what Dr. King said. Here was a sermon that he delivered in 1962 at Ebenezer Baptist Church. Sermon was entitled, Can a Christian Be a Communist? Dr. King said, now let us begin by answering the question which our sermonic topic raises. Can a Christian be a communist? Here, listen to what he says. I answer that question. I, Dr. King, I answer that question with an emphatic no. These two philosophies are diametrically opposed. The basic philosophy of Christianity is unalterably opposed to the basic philosophy of communism, and all of the dialectics of the logician cannot make them lie down together. They are contrary philosophies. This is what he said in his book, Stride Toward Freedom. He said, I strongly disagreed with communism's ethical relativism, since for the communists, there is no divine government, no absolute moral order. There are no fixed immutable principles. Consequently, almost anything, force, violence, murder, lying. And we know that Dr. King preached non-violent activism. Dr. King says, consequently, almost anything on communism, force, violence, murder, lying is a justifiable means to the millennial end. He says again, in communism, the individual ends up in subjection to the state. Man becomes hardly more than a depersonalized cog in the turning wheel of the state. Man must never be treated as a means to the end of the state, but always as an end with himself. And then in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Dr. King says, communism forgets that life is individual. Capitalism forgets that life is social. So he did critique capitalism. He goes on to say the kingdom of brotherhood is found neither in the thesis of communism nor the antithesis of capitalism, but in a higher synthesis. These are Martin Luther King's writings and words and speeches and sermons. And what Chattel Jackson wants you to believe, said he didn't really believe it. He didn't really mean it. That he was being deceptive. He was actually a communist shill. Now, Dr. Ash, go ahead and piggyback off of that, because I want to go deeper into this, because we don't just have Dr. King's writings and sermons, but we also can look at Dr. King's work. And I do want to review some of the work that Dr. King did in Grenada, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And I want the audience to review this with us and ask the question as we review it, how is any of that compatible with Marxism or communism? But go ahead, Dr. Ash. Let me turn it over.
No problem, my brother. One thing that also that he lies about, and it's even more serious than that. I mean, as serious as that is, and it's disgusting, but even more seriously is that he tells the lie that Dr. King did not believe in the Christian faith, and that's a common false accusation. But there's a sermon, I forgot the name of it, but it's easy to find. It's on Dr. King's his sermon on Easter. And with his sermon on Easter, he talks about Jesus Christ raising from the dead, for us. And that's the unambiguous core of Christianity. So for him to say that is abominable. Another thing too is that he is really, he's echoing the false narrative that equal rights and justice for people is somehow morally wrong. That what you had shared earlier about the state's rights to do what, right? That somehow having equal opportunity in life, having being seen as an equal human being at all, that somehow that is morally wrong for a racist white person to do. And so they what he's doing is he doesn't really say he's a Christian. He doesn't claim to be, which is interesting. But what he's essentially saying is that everything Christianity teaches is wrong. Everything that Christianity teaches about people, about that all are one before Jesus Christ, right? Where there's no male or female. As far as our importance before Christ, everybody's the same. To treat everyone as their brothers, and that in all of those teachings of the Bible, he's basically saying that that is morally wrong, and that that is subversive. It's communist. It's socialist, and it's something evil. And Isaiah says it very well. He said, "Woe to them that call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness." Right. And that's exactly what Chad O. Jackson and his ilk and those and the people, his puppet masters, are doing.
Yep. And again, guys, we're bringing this out because we want you to see that none of this is new. All right. The FBI, the government, Hoover tried tirelessly to prove that Dr. King was some type of communist. Also, you have Cold War era organizations springing up, like the John Birch Society. All right, white supremacist organization, alarmist organization. Basically, everybody, according to the John Birch Society, was a communist. They even said President Dwight Eisenhower was a communist. The CEO later came on and said that Thomas Jefferson was acting subversively to destroy the United States from within. So according to the John Birch Society, like, everybody was communist. A lot of Confederate sympathizers and white supremacists became Birchers. All right. I actually want to show, I want to show you this little clip, because I want you to see that what Chad O. Jackson is doing isn't new. It's been around forever, since Cold War era, communism craze, McCarthyism, all of that stuff. As a matter of fact, Chad O. Jackson actually has a podcast where he talks about how McCarthy was right. So he actually also defends McCarthy and McCarthyism, which leads me to believe that he's either a Bircher or he's Bircher adjacent. And for those of you guys that are wondering, what is the John Birch Society like? What is all this stuff? Just watch this. Watch this, guys. Watch this.
In some of these extremist groups, find out what they say, what they stand for, why they are a deadly threat to progress and to our free institutions. Start with the John Birch Society. More than 100,000 strong, bigger than many international unions. Income, $750,000 a year. Membership, militant, dedicated, growing, secret. Its leader, this man, Robert Welch. He calls former President Eisenhower a conscious, dedicated agent of the communist conspiracy. Says, democracy is a perennial fraud. Arouses his followers with statements like this. As of July 1st, 1960, our experts place the total communist influence over our national activities at a minimum of 40% of total control. In the Blue Book of the John Birch Society, Welch draws a sinister blueprint for action, commands Birchers to conceal themselves behind hundreds of fronts, to grab control of parent-teachers associations and other civic groups, to intimidate and purge liberal educators and school board members, to gag liberal clergymen. In the name of anti-communism, Welch orders Birchers to take a leaf out of the book of the American Communist Party, to use communist tactics infiltrating influence groups, then taking them over. In practice, the John Birch brand of Americanism divides communities, sets neighbor against neighbor, creates discord and suspicion. It even makes spies of school children.
What I find the most disturbing about the John Birch Society is how they used these tactics of fear, lies, and hate to oppose the civil rights movement in the 1960s. It was shameful how they lied about Martin Luther King, who was fighting for equal rights, and labeled him a communist who was out to destroy the nation. But this is the standard MO of the John Birch Society. Their extremism of the day made them an easy target to mock, and Bob Dylan wrote a song titled Talking John Birch Paranoid Blues, which is absolutely hysterical. The Chad Mitchell Trio wrote a song about them, as did Tom Paxton. Both of them titled their songs The John Birch Society. Check them out sometime. The lyric to Paxton's song states, quote, Eisenhower is a commie, Robert Welch has told us so. Little Caroline's subversive, all these secret spies must go. Robert Welch must be our leader. He will see our country through, paddling across the broad Potomac in a red birch bark canoe. It's great. Welch and his society members opposed the U.S. Supreme Court's Brown versus Board of Education decision that ruled that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional and started a campaign to impeach Chief Justice Earl Warren. They fought against allowing children of all races to attend public schools together.
So we're just trying to show you that Chattel Jackson is drawing from a deep well of historical revisionism, lies. The FBI, even the FBI, after years of surveillance, admitted that they had no evidence that the civil rights movement was a communist project. Here's what they said in an official report. No evidence existed that Dr. King was a communist or ever was affiliated with the Communist Party. Excuse me. After years of here's what they said. This is in the official report on the FBI's actions and investigations after Dr. King's assassination. After years of wiretaps, bugs, and surveillance on Martin Luther King Jr. and the SCLC, official U.S. government investigations, including the 1976 Senate Church Committee and a 1977 Justice Department report, concluded that no evidence ever showed that King was a communist, that his movement was a communist project, or that communist advisors dictated his decisions. Okay, this is from the government's own investigations. The FBI spent years trying to find it, y'all. And they never, ever did. No evidence existed that Dr. King was a communist or ever was affiliated with the Communist Party. All right. Now, Dr. Ash, let me, because I can keep on going, Doc. I'm a freight train. So let me pause. Did you have anything? Because I did want to bring in Dr. King and his campaign in Grenada, but I want to turn the floor over.
No, it's just very telling that, and this is something that we see in this type of extremism, even today, in the Trump era, is that the John Birch Society, even though they decried communism, they encouraged their members to adopt communist tactics to achieve their ends, right? And that kind of hypocrisy is disgusting, and it's a basic, Romans chapter 2 violation. Right, thou that preaches, thou shalt not steal. Do you steal? Right, and that's really what they do, and you'll see that type of hypocrisy everywhere. Another thing too is I'd like to share is one of my the verse that's educated me the most on people's motives is Titus 1:15, and it says, "To the pure all things are pure, but to the impure, but to the corrupt and unbelieving, nothing is pure, because even their very hearts are defiled." So really what it boils down to is that when people tend to assume that you are like they are, right? And so when they make assumptions about you or accuse you of something, they will typically accuse you of having the same motives that they actually have. And that's a principle that I've seen play out countless times since understanding that verse in that way. And that's what they're doing, is that they're projecting their own demonic evil onto other people in a different form, with using different words. And that's really what's going on behind all of this. And and not to mention that in terms of freedom, justice, and equality, these things happened in the United States before Karl Marx was ever born, right? I mean, like in the 1600s, 1700s. I mean, so this is a continuation of what Black people, particularly the Black church, has been doing ever since the first African Christians were brought to these shores in 1619, kidnapped from, a Christian Africa that existed before Europeans ever got there. So this is a continuing theme, and you're absolutely right. There's nothing new under the sun. And what they do is that they morph and change and adapt their language to whatever expression of that they hate today. So back in slavery, it was this agitators, and then in Jim Crow, it was segregation forever. Nowadays, it's like anti like critical race theory or anti Black Lives Matter. Just saying that our lives matter offends them. And what they do is that they claim, and here's another lie that they tell. And then I'll be quiet for a minute. But one of the things that they do is they what Jesus said. He said that, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, for you say that, you decorate the tombs of the prophets, and you say that if we were back then, we wouldn't have killed them. But you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. You're the sons of there. So fill up then the measure of your fathers. And so what they do in every generation is that they decry, at least on the surface, the evils of their ancestors. But what they do is they implement the same evils in the different way, in the different setting that exists today. So the same people who decried, the Jim Crow, the Jim Crow people, they said, oh, we're not like our ancestors. They wanted slavery, right? Right. So, but they were implementing Jim Crow and lynchings and burning people alive and murder, and then now today in the Reagan to Trump era, they're saying, you got civil rights. Well, we got civil rights over your dead bodies. We clawed it out of your cold, dead hands, like the gun advocates, right? And that shows, and you oppose whatever we are doing today to advance our cause, to address genuine problems, systemic problems that we face. You oppose that. So that means if you were 100 years ago, you would have been supporting Jim Crow. And if you would have been speaking against desegregation, if you were 100 years before that, you would have been speaking against abolition. That's what Jesus was saying, is that these are the spiritual descendants of the people that murdered the slaves, the people that burned Christians alive, that persecuted the Black church, burned Christians alive and ate their bodies, and then brought their children to help skin them.
Yep. So again, the claim is Dr. King was a Marxist communist. Ignore his writings, ignore his sermons. All of that was just, just to shield him from his actual feelings and intentions. The claim is Dr. King was secretly smuggling in Marxism, the communist agenda, into this country. I read you some quotes. I told you about the FBI findings. It's amazing that some people will disregard what Martin Luther King actually said and wrote, and some people will disregard the findings of the FBI and believe Chad O. Jackson. Why? Because confirmation bias, because they're racist and they want to cling to these racist ahistorical narratives. But now let's listen to Dr. King. Let's take a moment to kind of just reflect. Dr. King goes to Grenada, Mississippi. Black people in Grenada, they're living in deplorable conditions. Housing is awful. And there's a big supermarket in the town of Grenada. It is actively discriminating against black residents. And the black residents in Grenada, they live in the midst of a food desert. So they have to go to this, it's called the Pack and Sack in Grenada, right? They go to this supermarket where they are just discriminated against, mistreated. And so Dr. King goes to Grenada, Mississippi to launch a campaign. He wants to build a supermarket in Grenada, Mississippi. Now, let's listen to Dr. King. This clip is about 8 minutes long. We'll stop it here and there, but let's listen to Dr. King. I'd be interested to know whether or not Chad Jackson even touches Dr. King's Grenada campaign in his documentary. If he does, I'd be interested to know how he gets around this. If he doesn't, that's pretty convenient. Again, I haven't watched the documentary because it's behind a paywall. I refuse to give this man any money. But let's listen to Dr. King in his own words. And those of you that are familiar with Marxism, communism, those of you that actually know what it is, tell me if this is compatible. Let's listen. Let's watch.
Logic of the business and professional people.
I just want to say that we feel that this is the most significant move for this community. One of the things that we've been saying all along is in the future, all over the South and all over the United States, we're going to build more businesses in the Negro community, more cooperatives, and we're going all out to.
So he wants to build more businesses in Negro communities and more cooperatives, similar to Fannie Lou Hamer's farming cooperative, right? So let's continue.
Economic power.
That's how he's hoping to achieve economic power.
It's like Costco.
Yeah. Yep.
Membership clubs,
continue.
you know. Yeah.
Yep. Let's continue.
Is one of the first expressions of this in Mississippi, and we intend to follow it through. I think also that this is the beginning of the complete economic redevelopment of Grenada. We're going all out to get federal programs in the community to deal with the housing conditions, which happen to be terribly depressing conditions, and to deal with the general economic deprivation of the Negro. And we feel that this new venture is one of the first and finest expressions of this, and we think it will come into fruition in the not too distant future as an expression of the collective pooling of resources on the part of Negroes in the community of Grenada, Mississippi.
And I'd like to correct that name as Jonathan Walker.
So he wants to open this supermarket. Not only that, he wants to open other businesses in black communities. It's going to be a cooperative, meaning black people can give money into this and actually buy shares. He's going to later talk about that. Buy shares. They will be owners of this venture. All right. And then he also mentioned housing and how he's going to seek. He's going to go to the federal government to address some of the housing challenges in Grenada. Keep that in mind, because some of you guys are saying, see right there. Okay. But keep that in mind, because he's going to talk about that a little bit later. So let's continue.
Construction company in Atlanta, Georgia.
Dr. King, is this a certain special kind of black power? Well, if we use that phrase, as you know, I don't use the phrase, but if we use that, I would certainly say this is the kind of concrete, real black power that I believe in. I don't believe in black separatism. I don't believe in black power that would have racist overtones. But certainly, if black power means the amassing of political and economic power in order to gain our just and legitimate goals, we all believe in that, and I think all white people of goodwill believe in that. And this is what we are beginning to see in Grenada.
So this is interesting, Dr. Ash, because he's asked about Black Power. Now, remember what's going on at this time as well. You have SNCC, and you have more militant Black organizations sort of arising, and they're challenging Dr. King. You have the Black Panther Party that will come into play. They are overtly communist Marxist, right, in their ideology and philosophy. Dr. King is asked right there, is this that, essentially? And Dr. King is like, no, he wasn't we know that he wasn't a big fan of the term Black Power, but he's like, look, if by Black Power you mean Black people having the right to vote, Black people opening up their own businesses and having some type of economic power in their own communities, then I'm all for that, and every white person of goodwill should be for that. So he's separating himself from these other groups and organizations arising that are a little bit more overtly, that are in fact overtly communist Marxist in their ideology and in their aims. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts to this point so far?
I think, yeah, I agree. And that also what he's doing is quite a genius idea that white people are already doing. Like, for instance, cooperatives, right? Farmers have had cooperatives for a long time, including white farmers. The collective, the type of shared economics is more like a credit union, right?
Yes.
Instead of a private bank, right? You've got shareholders, you've got, and that type of, the way to start that from there, and also the emphasis on business without restricting what kind of business it is. That doesn't preclude private ownership. It doesn't preclude any, but it understands that, like, if you have a lot, and later on in the clip, he'll bring this in, if it's the same clip that you share with me, is that everybody pitches in, a little money, $5 or whatever you can. What'll happen is that becomes seed money for something that can generate jobs, which can actually flower more personal entrepreneurship. Right. And that's a model, a very well-established economic model that white people have been using. And also these federal programs are things that white people are already taking advantage of, right, to the tunes of many, many millions of dollars, as opposed to the few dollars that he's looking to redirect into Grenada.
That's right. And he wants this supermarket to compete with the supermarket that's across town. Okay. Yeah. So let's continue.
Gaining political power. Some 3,300 Negroes are now registered to vote. And with this new economic venture, and even larger ones in the future, this will give the kind of economic and political power to the Negro community of Grenada that will be so significant in achieving and fulfilling legitimate goals. I want to ask you to support it. Now, everybody can't get $100 worth of shares or $1,000 worth, but I believe almost everybody can get at least $5 or $10 worth, so that everybody can feel a part of this cooperative movement. We are going to map a program to really get Grenada not only set up as an open city, but we are going to map a program to get more money in the pockets of the Negro people of the city of Grenada.
How? Through business, right? Through cooperative ventures. Okay. All right. Let's continue.
We're going to work on a program to get better housing. And I'm going to Washington personally to talk with Dr. Weaver, the head of our housing program in this country, about getting, on the one hand, public housing in Grenada and other places in Mississippi where we don't have it, and secondly, to build housing units for low and moderate income families that we ourselves can own.
Private ownership, private home ownership. So it's a both and solution. So public housing is a part of the solution, but also building houses that can be privately owned.
All right. And then also this, echoes the trillions of dollars that was given in low interest loans to white families across the United States in the suburban boom to generate home ownership, to set the foundation for generational wealth, to be able to uplift the entire white community in a way to be more prosperous and able to afford things and to have a better standard of living, right? So that he wants to bring that was not done by private enterprise, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. That was done by government grants and government loans,
Right.
low interest loans. And those same things need, are what he's targeting to bring into Grenada and into, Black communities across the United States to have the same type of impact, of positive impact, even more so, than it had even for white families.
That's right. So far, we hear Dr. King advocating for Black-owned supermarkets, shareholding citizens, home ownership, and economic independence within the market. Okay? So ownership, entrepreneurship, cooperative pooling, and then, however, he does want moral limits on the markets, but he's not trying to have a massive government takeover of the markets. So what it sounds like is a lot like, and Chad O. Jackson is a big fan of Booker T. Washington, right? And Booker T. Washington cast down your buckets, right, where you are. Booker T. Washington was all about, look, let's build from within. Let's build our own businesses. Okay, so it sounds a little bit like that, right? We also know the legacy and the history of Black mutual aid societies, church-led cooperatives. As a matter of fact, let's listen to Dr. King as he then speaks prophetically to the church.
But now there's a plan in the federal government. There's a plan in the housing program where these units can be built 100% financed by the federal government through non-profit corporations. I'm going to be meeting with the ministers in Grenada, urging them through their churches to build homes all over this city for the Negro people so that we can live in honor and we can live in dignity and that we can live in sanitary housing conditions all over this city.
So again, to your point, it's the same way that the suburbs were created. Federal money, federal subsidies, right? But he's leaning on the churches as moral agents within the community to take up this work, right? That's not what a Marxist would do. Okay, a Marxist is not going to invest this charge to churches. Okay, a Marxist is not going to lean on churches to implement these plans and strategies. All right, let's continue.
You supported this movement. By and large, you stuck together. Let me stress the fact that we can achieve much more through unity than we can through division. So let us stick together. Support this movement. For there is still a great deal of work to be done. Now, I don't need to point out in any long statement the many things that we have to do ahead. In Grenada, Mississippi, and all over the state of Mississippi for that matter, the Negro is still at the bottom of the economic ladder. The vast majority of Negroes of this state are poverty-stricken, unable to afford the basic necessities of life. In the Delta of Mississippi, some 60% of the people, Negro people, are unemployed. 90% or more are poverty-stricken. There are thousands and thousands of Negroes all over the state of Mississippi earning less than $800 a year. This is criminal. This is a shame before the Almighty God.
So it's a shame before who?
The Almighty God.
That's that sounds like Marxist rhetoric to me right there.
Oh, no. Yeah. And the thing is that, with these these lying sort of narratives that Chado Jackson and his type put out, what they, just look at the actual impact of what they're saying. 90% of Black people in Mississippi were in poverty. Those are the days that Chad O. Jackson wants to push us back to. By when he's supporting their rhetoric, the people that are feeding him that chum that he spouts out, those people put those systems in place to keep 90% of Black people in poverty and 60% unemployed, living in shacks. He'll describe their living conditions before, and I mean a little later, but still, think about that. When MAGA or Chad O. Jackson, they're Black shills, when they talk about returning to those days, that's what they mean. Because if they return to those days, what he's described, what Dr. King is describing, that will be the end result.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And we can clearly see that King's framework was not Marxism. So it's theological. It believed deeply in the imago Dei, right, of all human beings.
Yes.
Right. It was personalist. So, the dignity of people over systems. Right. He wanted people to live well, to eat well, to be enfranchised, to be treated as image bearers. And he certainly was a reformist, but not a revolutionary. He didn't want to completely get rid of capitalism. He didn't want to completely overthrow it. The supermarket was built as a means to survive racism within a capitalist construct.
Right. And to thrive no matter what the situations are. Right. I mean, like we saw that in Harlem, we saw it in Fillmore, we saw it in Southside Chicago, where white people would come and patronize Black clubs and eat in Black restaurants, even though they were in a apartheid and Jim Crow type society, because the service was good, the music was good, the quality of the product was there that brought them there, right? And so even though they went back to their all-white neighborhoods to live, this is something that brought commerce, that brought entrepreneurship into, and that enabled Black people to become property owners, to build the Harlems of the 1930s and 40s and so forth, right? I mean, these are the types of initiatives that made that possible. And when Chad O. Jackson is speaking against this, he wants to reverse that and try to make thoughtfully regulated capitalism that works for everyone, because it was working for white people. He tries to make that into some kind of communist plot, and it just isn't.
Yeah. All right, let's put him back up so we can complete this clip and bring this one on home. We're now a couple of hours, about 2 hours and 15 minutes, almost 2 hours and 15 minutes into the discussion. It's good. It's a good one, but I'm tired. And I know, Dr. Ash, you are as well. You haven't been feeling well. We're praying for you, and interject where we may. And then, let's give our final statements. But let's uh-oh. Something's. Can you guys hear me?
Man.
Hello?
I can hear you. You were freezing up a little bit a minute or so ago, but I can hear.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello? 1 1 2 1 2. Can you?
I can hear you. Your picture is frozen, but I can hear you.
Okay, am I back?
Yes. You're grabbing the brim of your hat.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't know, for whatever reason, this Wi-Fi here, this does this all the time, and I don't know. I'm in my office at the church, and I don't understand why my Wi-Fi does this. But let's try to push through while my bars are full right now. So
okay,
let me put them back up.
Play the part, pretend to be a minister preaching the gospel, when in reality he was teaching something more subversive, Marxist ideology cloaked in a Christian garb. But what's more important is the fact that when you look at the ideas that he was pushing, ideas like a radical redistribution of wealth, which is rooted in Marxism, a universal income, which again is rooted in Marxism. When he said that we want justice to roll down like waters, he wasn't referring to biblical justice, but social justice. All of the things that King was saying was geared toward a Marxist, globalist, communist idea.
Okay,
these were
the
ideas.
This is actually, it's called a false equivalence or a false dichotomy more. It's a false dichotomy. And for someone who claims to think logically, he's creating a false dichotomy between biblical justice and social justice, when social justice is actually one of the aspects of biblical justice. There's individual justice, but there's also social justice that's rooted both in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the teachings of Jesus Christ and the apostles.
Yep.
Martin Luther King. It's a light bulb there. And so the reality of it is, when you look at the so-called Black church, we look at many Black Americans, we decided to listen to what he was saying and to go in this direction.
And again, that is false, right? There was an entire split within a major Black Baptist denomination over civil rights. The largest Black Baptist denomination in the country at that time did not go Martin Luther King's direction. The Progressive National Baptist Convention was founded in 1961 because J.H. Jackson and many within the National Baptist Convention USA opposed Dr. Martin Luther King. Many Black churches refused to give Dr. King a platform. Many Black preachers opposed Dr. King. So this narrative that everybody just followed Dr. King, every Black church was a supporter, stalwart ally. No, that again, this is historical revisionism to fit a specific narrative. And we're about to see what the point that he's trying to make here in just a second.
There's a lot of things that have happened, a lot of detrimental things that have happened in the wake of us going in that direction. We now see marriage rates plummeting amongst Blacks. So we're no longer getting married to the degree that we were getting married prior to going this direction. Over 70% of Black children are being born out of wedlock. Many Black children are not reading or writing at grade level. And then too, when you look at the Cato Institute study from 2019, over 60% of Black people believe that socialism is preferable to the free market enterprise system.
And again, that's a non sequitur. The fact that Black people think that socialism is preferable over capitalism is not directly related to Dr. King. Could it by chance be related to the fact that we've suffered under capitalism? That we have struggled to be homeowners and to create generational wealth under this system? Pointing back to Dr. King as the reason why Black people in 2019 prefer socialism over capitalism is a non sequitur. And again, to your point, he claims to be a logical thinker, but yet he's engaging in these logical fallacies over and over again. In 2019, Black people prefer socialism over capitalism, but he's trying to make the correlation that that's because of Dr. King.
Right. And also there's some other basic methodological errors that he's making. One is what I shared earlier, is that all of these declines in terms of family, out of wedlock births, those apply to white people as well. And when you adjust for income, Black people are really not much worse at all than white people. Another thing too is that oh heck, I forgot. Okay, go ahead. I'll think of it in a second. I don't know.
So in going this direction,
okay.
we literally
I remember. Okay. Another thing is there's a methodological principle in doing these types of polling, right? And that is definition of words. So what you have is it depends on the Cato Institute, if I remember them correctly, is one of these right-wing think tanks. And so with that, you have to, the first question to ask is, what is their definition of socialism?
Right.
And what you do is that you get into, another logical fallacy, which is circular reasoning. So what you do is that you define socialism as whatever you don't want it to be, equal rights, justice, and that sort of thing, right?
Yes.
And then Black people believe in equal rights and justice, therefore they believe in socialism, right? And so that's actually a false conclusion. And I'd be willing to bet actual money that that's what he's doing, that's actually a false conclusion based on a false definition of the term socialism.
For the worse. And so the way my brain works is to go back and reanalyze these ideas, understand where we went wrong, repent, and resolve to keep moving in the proper direction. Now, what's interesting is that, my detractors, people who say, oh, well, you can't go back and look.
Okay, I'm gonna end it there. Do you guys hear what he's claiming, y'all? So let's say he's right. Let's say he's telling the truth. Let's say that like the Black community experienced this like precipitous decline in all of these areas because in all of these areas after 1950, right? That like let's assume that he's correct. Right? His conclusion is the reason why we experience this precipitous decline is because of Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement. That's the conclusion that he wants people to reach. He wants people to look back at Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement as the cause of the quote unquote decline within Black communities. Do you understand how frankly stupid and simplistic that conclusion is? And do you realize how much history you have to completely ignore in order to reach that conclusion? Dr. Ash, I want you to interject here if you have anything, but I want to he doesn't say anything about urban renewal. And if you don't know what urban renewal was, I'm gonna play a brief clip. But he doesn't mention any of that. He doesn't mention the government's role in any of that quote unquote decline. He doesn't like the intentional assault upon the Black community by the federal government. No, instead he points to Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement as the culprit.
And also,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's I think this clip that you're gonna play is very critical. Like we should just mention a couple other things afterwards. Yeah. But not only is it there's the stupid part that you're accurately describing, but there's also a very insidious part as well. What he's saying is we should have stayed on that same path.
Yes.
Of Jim Crow in the South and apartheid in the North. That's what he's saying underneath it all.
Yep. Because remember, guys, he's not a historian. He's a Confederate apologist.
Right.
So he's aligned with the Confederacy the descendants of Confederate soldiers, politicians. All right. So he's going to look at the civil rights movement through that lens. And he's going to align with the white citizens councils. He's going to align with segregationists and their view of the civil rights movement. All right. Let's so for those of you guys that may be new to this discussion, we just saw Chad O. Jackson conclude that the civil rights movement, Dr. King, they are the cause of the so-called decline of the Black community. He says nothing about urban renewal, redlining. And if you're new to this discussion, you're wondering about the history and the legacy, all that stuff, check this brief clip out, and then we're gonna bring this to a close. Check this out.
Created color-coded maps that told banks where they could give out housing loans. The green sections were a go, whereas the red sections, typically where Black people lived.
These maps, though created decades ago, still shape opportunity today. Neighborhoods marked as hazardous struggle to attract investment and accumulate wealth across generations. The FHA's underwriting guidance explicitly counseled against infiltration of neighborhoods by inharmonious racial groups and recommended racially restrictive covenants as a way to protect lending value. Through these formal and informal channels, the housing market was partitioned along race lines. Government tools that made suburban home ownership possible for millions of white families were withheld from Black Americans, concentrating poverty, reducing the ability to accumulate home equity, and creating spatial segregation across generations.
Try to stabilize the housing market. The Fair Housing Act is passed in 1934. And as part of that, the Homeowners Loan Corporation is also established.
Insured mortgage is brought within the reach of all citizens on a monthly payment.
It takes a lot of risk off the banks, it places it onto the federal government. And now working class, middle class families, they're able to purchase a home.
Unfortunately, as part of that, what the HOLC does is it establishes designations for neighborhoods based on the occupants of those neighborhoods.
The result wasn't just segregated neighborhoods, it was segregated wealth. From the 1940s through the 1970s, city and federal officials pursued urban renewal projects, often described as clearing slums, creating highways, or redeveloping downtowns. But in practice, they disproportionately targeted majority Black neighborhoods.
That's Highway 40, and it was built on top of this thriving community in the 1950s and 60s. The construction of this highway completely disrupted this community. This process was what was known as urban renewal, and it was very racist.
It was something called urban renewal.
In Philadelphia, 50,000 people, mostly Black, have been moved, uprooted, and displaced. Families and friends broken up. Thought urban renewal meant the tearing down of slums. So she painted and scrubbed, swept and repaired their neighborhood. For this, they received the Clean Block Award from the city, and then the university expansion program swept them away.
The physical demolition stripped capital and community, leaving behind empty lots, broken social networks, and neighborhoods that never recovered. Perhaps nothing embodied the literal cutting up of Black neighborhoods like the interstate highway system. Routes were often routed through the least politically powerful areas, frequently redlined. Black neighborhoods uprooting homes and commerce. Once neighborhoods were graded or bisected, bankers and appraisers treated them as high risk. Credit dried up, investment fled, tax bases shrank, the physical and economic decline fed stereotypes about criminality and pathology, which then justified further divestment. Behind every redlined block, every bulldozed street, every federal policy, there were human lives.
He doesn't even mention any of that because that doesn't fit his narrative.
Right.
He doesn't mention any of that because if he can blame Dr. King and the civil rights movement, villainize them, then he can see the Voting Rights Act overturned, which he's advocating for. He can see the Civil Rights Act overturned. So this is all political for him. All right. So he's carefully curating the narrative, spinning the narrative because he has political goals. By the way, he is go ahead.
No, yeah, and I would say economic goals as well, because they pay these shills very, very nicely. Like so you can bet Not only is he getting AdSense revenue from YouTube, TikTok, and all these other places, but he's also getting speaking honorariums when he goes to these white supremacist organizations and speaks. He's getting paid. And what we saw in that clip is the intentional, ongoing, historic destruction, systemic destruction of Black wealth. And what it's saying is that in the whole goal of this, and I actually drove when I was lecturing, I was giving a seminar on critical race theory in the Bible in Atlanta. And so while I was there, I was driving on the highway. One of my brothers, the brother who invited me, set it up, told me that the highway we were driving on was built through Reverend King's neighborhood.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I think it's Highway 85 or something. I forgot what the number is, but you can do a search on Tulsa is just the beginning. Rosewood just beginning, and you can do a search and on Wikipedia there's an article that lists 200 Black neighborhoods that were destroyed in the 19th and 20th century, and then by a little further research you can find that there were hundreds more just in the 20th century alone that were destroyed. In Mississippi, the State Highway Commission that did the interstate highway planning was run by a Ku Klux Klan member. And so and there were hundreds, not just 200 that Wikipedia lists, but there were hundreds of these destructions of Black neighborhoods, systemic and intentional, and they displaced millions of Black people. And this is an assault, by the way, spiritually. This is an assault on the Black church, because again, 73%, even today, of Black people in the United States profess to be Christians, and that was higher back in that day. So this was really a demonic assault against the Black church, because these people they were displacing, that they were killing, that they were burning, redlining, those were Black Christians. Those were Christian people. And that there's always a spiritual, when it's systemic like that, there's always a spiritual dimension and a spiritual ultimate cause behind it. And the difference in our day is that it's couched in more secular terms. But these are Black Christians that were being assaulted like this.
Yep. I mean, you have the legacy of Seneca Village, that is now Central Park in New York.
Yeah.
Africatown, the descendants of the Clotilda in Alabama. That was a thriving Black town before quote unquote urban renewal. We can go on and on and on and on. He doesn't even mention it. He doesn't even. It's not even a passing reference.
Right.
And that's intentional.
It's not in his Confederate talking points database.
That's right. One last clip that I want to play. Actually, I want to two clips, and then we're going to be done. I actually have another meeting at 7:30. But listen, when you hear Chad O. Jackson disparaging the civil rights movement, disparaging Martin Luther King, talking about states' rights and the cause of the Civil War being about states' rights, just know that he is echoing Confederate talking points, White Citizens Council talking points. He is actually the ghost of the living Black ghost of Strom Thurmond, Stennis, Ross Burnett, George Wallace, and others. I want to connect that dot. Again, reinforce that again by showing you this clip. It talks about the White Citizens Council, and these citizens councils they don't exist overtly anymore. I mean, they still exist, but not in the same way they did then. And Chad O. Jackson is their token. Okay, so watch this clip, and you'll understand where Chad O. Jackson is pulling this stuff.
If you want to know how integration has been held outside Mississippi for...
Now, wait a minute. You see that logo there? What does it say? It says Citizens Council, States' Rights.
and racial integrity.
Okay, that's the official seal of the White Citizens Council. Let's continue.
This long, you must first call on the Citizens Council, an organization dedicated to states' rights and racial integrity. Support comes from Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and 85,000 living white citizens of Mississippi. The overwhelming political power of the council is well demonstrated by the fact that it is partially supported by state taxes.
I was born in Mississippi, in the United States, and I'm the product of my heredity and education and the society in which I was raised. And I have a vested interest in that society, and I, along with 1 million other white Mississippians, will do everything in our power to protect that vested interest. It's just as simple as that.
In 1954, the Citizens Council was established in the Delta, the northwest section of the state, where blacks outnumbered whites.
He will do anything within his power to maintain their quote-unquote way of life, including skew history, torture bodies, engage in racial terror, and we see Chad O. Jackson carrying that torch today.
And it's interesting and ironic and not coincidental that these same people who were willing to do those horrific things to others were screaming bloody murder when Malcolm X said by any means necessary, when he didn't even mean that type of demonic savagery.
Yep. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that is hypocrisy. That is hypocrisy at its finest.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm still experiencing some glitchiness here. So forgive me if I'm punching in at the wrong times. All right, lastly, I got to do this one. Okay, I'm going to be kind of petty here. All right, I'm going to admit that I'm going to be kind of petty here. But when you think about motivations, right? Like why would this guy do this? Like, why would he betray, black people this way? Why would he engage in this way? Of course, we've highlighted some potential motivations. We don't know his heart specifically, but we're judging his fruits, grifting, things of that nature. But I show, and again, I'm being petty here a little bit. So bear with me. I showed Dr. Ash this clip, but fellas, remember when you were in high school, middle school, and you had a really bad breakup with a girl, and she broke your heart so badly that you wanted to like go public and shame her and talk about how bad she was, and you wrote a rap about it, you wrote a song about it, right? Because this girl broke your heart, and you wanted everybody to know and everybody to go, and you wanted everybody to understand how horrible this girl was because your heart was broken and because she rejected you. Well, Chad O. Jackson kind of did that, but it wasn't about a girl, y'all. It was about black culture. Check this out.
Black culture don't own me. I won't let it control me. Back then, my biggest fear was that black culture would disown me, but not now. That's the old me, because black culture is phony. Black culture don't know me, but black culture do owe me back all the years from my youth when I was lied to about what I can and can't do. Even through Jim Crow, that still was not true. Black businesses and prosperous schools, we let it go for a movement, a ruse, turned into Marxists for fear of a noose. Turned out all along it was communist Jews and communist whites and communist blacks destroying the nation, a full-blown attack. Created black culture through trends and fads and television and marketing ads. Evil is not good and good is not bad, but sadly, black culture is not telling you that. Sadly, black culture is peddling cap. You hear it from Roland, you hear it in rap, urban morning shows, and barbershop chat. They say, I sold out. Why'd I go and do that? Simply because I will not fall for the trap. They say, I sold out. Why'd I go and do that? Because God is greater than the skin on my back. They say I sold out. Why'd I go and do that? Because sadly, black culture don't know how to act. They said I sold out. Why'd I go and do that? I keep it $1, $1 million a stack. Repent of your sins and get back on track. Black culture.
So he's keeping it a buck, a million a stack. He's breaking up with black culture. Obviously, he is scorned. He is hurt. So there's a vendetta that he's launching against this culture that spurned him and hurt him. And maybe he realized that he didn't have a future in the hip hop industry, and he resented that.
That's the truth.
Okay, I know that was petty. I know that was petty, but
they ain't got no rhymes, that's for sure.
Dr. Ash, look, we're at 2 hours and 40 minutes. We honestly, we could go on for another 6-7 hours. Any last words as we prepare to log out for the evening?
Yeah, actually two, my brother, and thank you, Pastor Isaiah, for having me. It's always a blessing and a privilege and honor to be here. This is one of the most valuable resources anywhere in the world right now, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. There's two things. Like, one is about Chad O. Jackson. Proverbs has there's a proverb in the book of Proverbs that says, "The poor who oppresses the poor is like a sweeping rain that leaves no food." Right, and that's Chad O. Jackson. That is Thomas Sowell. That is all of the other people that we've to talk about. That's this whole cadre of people. They oppress the people that are hurting the most, and they do a tremendous amount of damage. But also there are two Psalms, Psalm 37 and Psalm 73. Ironically, the reverse of but they say the same thing, and they say that to be encouraged, because don't be envious of the wicked when they prosper in their ways. My foot almost slipped, right, when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. And then when it goes on to say, but then, the Lord moved and I looked for his place and it wasn't there. Right? There's coming a time, these people cannot defeat us, just like they can't defeat the black church. And the black community is almost entirely identified with the black church. So many black people are Christians, and that doesn't mean everybody's perfect and everybody has absolutely perfect theology and that kind of stuff, right? But the fact is that this has been a centuries long persecution of the black church, and we as a church and as a people have risen from the ashes many, many times, and it's going to happen today. No matter how frightening and awful things get, and things may get much worse before they get better, but God is still on the throne, and if we stick with him the way that we have historically, then he's going to bring us through. These Chad O. Jacksons, they're going to be, the black church will be here long after they're dead and forgotten.
Amen. 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 And I want to say to all Christians, I want to piggyback off of Dr. Ash. Excellent what he just shared. Proverbs 18:17 says this: "The one who states his case first seems right, until the other comes and examines him." So you have Chad O. Jackson making all these claims, y'all, about a dead man. Dr. King is no longer here. He cannot respond to Chad O. Jackson. Now, we have his writings. Chad O. Jackson will tell you to ignore them. Chad O. Jackson will tell you he didn't really mean it. Chad O. Jackson implies that he knows Dr. King's heart. He is the Holy Spirit as it pertains to Dr. King and his true intentions. But Dr. King is not alive today to give redress. And so you're listening to all of these smears coming from this guy who is not a historian. He is a Confederate apologist, and he's drawing from a well of long debunked claims and charges. And you have a choice to make. Are you going to settle the case without even hearing the other side? Or are you going to err on the side of wisdom? That's what the book of Proverbs is all about. And realize that it is wrong for you to make a conclusion about a dead man who can't defend himself when the person making the claims obviously has an axe to grind and obviously is an opponent of not just Martin Luther King's worldview, but black people in general. He is not a friend to the what he called the so-called black community. And he said as much in his breakup rap to the black culture. So remember, Proverbs 18:17. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes. In this case, Dr. King can't come. So therefore, we have to base what we believe about Dr. King on what he said while he was still alive, and other accounts that are historically factual. Dr. Ash, I appreciate you, man. You've been here before. You will be back again. This has been a long one. Oh, I need everybody to subscribe. Okay, I haven't said that once. Also, if you want to drop a super chat, I know we're done now, but you can always do that. Subscribe to this podcast if you haven't yet. This is gonna be the last time I deal with Chad O. Jackson. This is now available unless he tries to come and dispute this. I don't know if he can, if he will. I know that there's fair use and all that stuff. I don't know if I fell within the lines of fair use and all that stuff, but this is here now. And this is available. People can sit and listen to this and weigh what's being said here against what he's saying over on his platform. And this is the last time I'll probably mention Chad O. Jackson or talk about Chad O. Jackson. Those of you in the chat, I appreciate y'all. I wasn't really addressing the chat because I was laser focused on this task. I knew that we had a lot to cover. And so I didn't really engage the chat. That doesn't mean that I did not see you and that I do not appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. You guys are phenomenal. This is a great community that we're building here. And Dr. Ash is a part of this community. He's been here before. He's going to be back. And so again, I appreciate all of you guys. All right. Well, that's it. That's the ball of wax. Dr. Ash, I appreciate you, my brother.
You too, my brother. God bless you, Pastor Isaiah.
All right, everybody. Have a great evening. God bless. Bye-bye.